Yo, 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 we are back with another installment of the Preaching Collective, where we are talking about Black Christian women that you should know. Pastor V, let's talk a little bit about our sister, Harriet Tubman, today.
Yeah, so this time around, we're going to be talking about Harriet Tubman and just a couple quick highlights for, I think a lot of people are familiar with her. She probably is one of the more well-known
Yeah, she's probably the most famous.
But for those who aren't totally familiar, she was born into slavery in 1822, and like most slaves, suffered a lot of abuse and separated from her family at a young age. When she was a teenager, she tried to stop one of the overseers from punishing an enslaved person, and he threw a weight at her, which basically impacted the rest of her life. She had seizures, headaches. But she described some of the things that happened in the wake of that as dreams and visions, and you can take that what you will. But I do think some of the things that she was led to do down the road sort of speak to however God used that in her life. It did lead to good, and one of the biggest goods was after she escaped from slavery. So she fled from Maryland to Philadelphia. Using the basically it said, my notes here say navigated by the North Star and help from the Underground Railroad network, mostly on foot. So you see much of God's providence in that.
Yeah.
But after that, so think about this: she escaped from slavery, but then said, "You know, I need to help other people." And so probably one of the things she's most famous for is being, like they said, a conductor on the Underground Railroad. The Underground Railroad was a system by which people were basically helping enslaved people escape from the South. And so you had to, you might say, different stops, different homes, places. If someone slave was running away, they knew they could stay there for the night, different paths through swamps and other things to be able to escape to freedom in the North. And so she became very instrumental in that whole system, returned to the South 13 times, directly saving 70 enslaved people. Also helped hundreds more by just giving instructions to them, contacts, routes they can follow. So you think about that. She's an escaped slave. She goes back into enemy territory to help other people,
Like on a rescue mission.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Famous for saying that she never lost a single passenger.
Yep.
All the people she went to free, just successful in doing. She also was in the Civil War and worked as a nurse, scout, spy, cook. She also led the Combahee River Raid, which is 1863. The first U.S. military operation led by a woman. She led that, which led to 700 enslaved people being freed. After the war, 700.
You hear me?
Sheesh.
After the war, she settled in Auburn, New York, and was continued to be active in women's suffrage
Movement, yeah.
Civil rights, care for the elderly and poor. Started a home called the Harriet Tubman Home for Aged and Indigent People. And then died in 1913. It's commonly remembered as the Moses of her people.
The
Moses, female Moses.
So those are just a quick sort of run through her life. Part of what we're doing in this preaching collective is sort of looking at the lives of these Black Christian women and saying what are some things that emerge that really do are sort of good examples, good embodiments of biblical principles and values that we should take and learn from. So as you guys sort of hear that story or things that you guys done some of your own reading, what are some things that stick out to you from her life?
Man. Well, first I think about, when you think about the ways in which she had to get to these places, like this isn't something that is just like we can just glance over, just like, oh, we're just going to throw it out there. But this woman, literally, it would take weeks. Some of these travels would take weeks, and she did it for a decade. And for her to stand like 10 toes down,
stand on business,
and say like, I've never,
yeah.
What was the quote? I've never derailed and never lost a passenger. Yeah. Like, I mean,
dang.
And one thing else I found very interesting about Harriet is she accredited all to God. She was like, God was giving her the vision. She would sit there, and if she needed to go left, she would go left. If she needed to go right, she really accredited that to her dependency on God and her faith in God to get her through where she needed to go. And so I think Harriet, so
you take that like the head injury. Some people would say, well, that was just,
you
say like, no, like that God did use it and that the visions were really used of.
Yeah. And maybe not even that. Maybe it was real vision. Aside from the injury, maybe this was her belief that God was just guiding her. Yeah.
So not necessarily the injury. But she's saying this injury, but regardless, God did give
Yeah.
her a sense of. I mean, clearly, I mean, you think of like how many people? 70? Is that what he said?
70. Yeah.
I mean, think about like all the things that could go wrong.
Yeah. For
Each,
sure.
You know, and she went back 13 times. All the things that can and did go wrong for people. She's a black woman. Like, how do you? I mean, I know she wore disguises and other things
Of
like
course.
that, but like
When
think
at
about
night,
all that had to go with that, and yet clearly you're seeing, I think, the hand of God to protect her.
yeah. I mean, at least her giving that credit to God.
Yeah.
Her saying over and over again, it wasn't just me. And call it Delulu, whatever you want to call it. You know, there's so many things that we want to dismiss in our day, but for God to give her favor like that and to give her divine protection like that, you cannot just dismiss that. You can't dismiss it.
Yeah. Her being the Moses of the female Moses.
Yeah.
So of course that brings up themes of, you know, Exodus and things of that nature. But you know, just think about these rescue missions. There's also another thread to kind of think about too, where it's like when we think about Jesus who came on a rescue mission for us, right? You know, and in some ways, Tubman, also known as Minty, her nickname Minty.
Minta.
You know, there's some interesting parallels between the rescue mission that she was on from a physical standpoint, but obviously the rescue mission that Jesus was on from a spiritual standpoint, you know? So I think there's something there. Also, too, has also been alluded, the head injury, and sometimes things happen to us.
Yeah.
And in the moment we may have our thoughts or feelings about it, but God is providentially, sovereignly kind of allowing things to happen for his ultimate purposes.
Yeah.
So I also think about Genesis 50, verse 20.
Joseph?
I think about that. Yeah. You know, what you meant for evil, God meant for good. And so
That's good.
that head injury, as we keep talking about, you know, whoever did that to her, they meant it for evil. But ultimately, like, God had a bigger purpose and plan and was able to use that to be able to help people get free.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, not to sort of downgrade the experience of going through something so traumatic. So, like, even though, you know, all things do work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to his purpose, that is true. While it is also true that, like, hey, though something has happened to you, again, grief is real. I think you should do that. And I think because again, like, in hindsight, it's much, much easier to look back after a lot of things have happened and say, hey, what you intended for evil, God used for good in the midst of the pain of a healing head injury and the difficulty. And, you know, though
She was 12. Yeah.
Yeah, you're seeing things. There's all the other things that come from traumatic injuries like that aren't as pleasant. You know, and again, I don't know if there was that. Again, often seizures come with that. You know, dizziness, vertigo. You don't know the day to day. Like, we have so much more language today.
Narcolepsy.
From what happens through stuff like that that we don't know back then. But despite all of that, to go back to your point to say, like, hey, all that is happening. And you can imagine what some people do. Like, there are different people who respond to that same situation where you have something physically traumatic happen to you because of evil. That is why that happened. But the way she moved through life anyways, again, and I think you go to that, like, for the joy set before her, right? You get free. And again, that doesn't go away. And so you're still going going back to this very, very dangerous situation, you know, to lead people back while you're dealing with all those things.
Yeah.
Like, it's not like this isn't a situation where, and I think that's important, where you realize she wasn't like miraculously healed.
Yeah. It says she
You know,
dealt with
and
it
you
the
might
rest
hear
of her
preaching
life.
that's just like, hey, look what God did. But it's like, that's not the way the story's written. Like, she still has this throughout the entirety of her life.
Time. Yeah.
She lives a long life and still does all of these things with this.
Yeah.
She's not allowing that. She's not allowing that to hinder her.
Yeah.
You see what I'm
You
saying?
know what I mean?
Yeah. So think about Paul and the thorn in his side, and it's like, hey, take this from me.
Right.
And instead the Lord says, my grace is sufficient.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty big lesson.
What's interesting to me is, how the reason she got that injury was because, as a teenager, she saw one of the overseers trying to punish another enslaved person.
Yep, who tried to escape.
And she responded to try to, stop him, right?
Yeah.
And
something Moses would do.
Yeah, it's just something, it just sort of speaks to, I'm trying to sort of put language to it, almost like the importance of, you see in her life, and just even the fact that once she got free to the north, she went right back to the south to help other people. Yeah. The sort of sense of not being silent in the face of evil, speaking up and acting.
Yeah.
From a very young age, that she would not sort of see things happening so blatantly evil and wrong and not say something or do something. And the significance importance of that, and especially when so much of human society and culture, it tends to orients itself towards, well, I just kind of go along with whatever's going on, because there's great danger in responding, right? Especially if you're the only one. I mean, you saw what happened to her. It was like she was the only one who responded, and she got hit in the head with this rock. Clearly, her responding to the evil of slavery put her in great danger by going back over and over. But just sort of a sense of like, if I had the ability to act and say something and do something, I'm going to act and do something. And so it's kind of boldness and courage. There's also sort of just a
bravery,
willingness to just an awareness of what's wrong and sinful, and a willingness to address it.
Yeah. Another, I was going to say, and I know they called her the female Moses, but reading her story and all the things that she's done, it also reminded me of the prophet, I think in Judges 4, where they call Deborah a prophet who judged Israel. And and what was it, Barak? She had God called her to, like, with her going on all these expeditions, but also leading the army to free 700 slaves. I'm like, okay, this is a woman who maybe call it prophecy, because those prophets had visions too. This is our modern day prophet in that sense as well. Just seeing those parallels. But I mean, this is a woman who, full of the Spirit again, would probably be a prophet in our day.
That's good.
That might be a reach, but still, you know what I mean?
No, I see what you're saying.
No, I think that's fair.
I think I also want to highlight too is, and you mentioned this too, Pastor V, but like her willingness to be able to act and walk in the ways that the Lord has called her to do. She founded a home for elderly African Americans. Yeah. I think it was called the Harriet Tubman Home for the Aged. And so I just think that's
when did she do that?
It's after the war, after she retired.
Yeah.
This was, but yeah, it's basically later in life.
Yeah, it was later on. And so, like, I don't know, when I think about like all the stuff that we're talking about, know, and then to be able to be like, you know what, I'm going to actually establish and found a home for elderly people, what I mean, to serve them, to love them, to care for them, essentially to be Jesus to them. I just think that that's also another thing that may not necessarily get talked about a lot, in terms of, because we think about these different rescue missions and stuff like that. But like, and I mean, I guess I'm also thinking about that too when I think about Phoenix, where we're at right now, and obviously the unhoused community, and obviously unhoused community spans not people that are just elderly, right? But that really struck me as I was kind of researching her a little bit about, yes, the rescue missions, yes, the courage, the bravery, yes, even the whole woman voting rights, that was alluded to earlier as well. But it's suffrage. Like that alone, she could like, hang her jersey in the rafters and be like, I'm good. But then she's still like, I'm gonna actually I'm gonna continue to keep working. I'm gonna find a home for elderly. I just think that's very commendable.
Most vulnerable.
Yeah, I think I have here is for the elderly, the poor, women in need. That sort of just responding to the biblical call of caring for those who are most vulnerable, most at risk. And so you see that sort of, I think, throughout her life, that she's always thinking like, who are the people who are most vulnerable? Who are the people who are most on the margins? And that there's always a category of people in that. So during the, obviously, for Civil War and other things. She's looking at helping slaves. But then afterwards, she said there's still people in great need, and I'm going to do something to help them. And I think the home is a reflection of that.
What are some threads you think from her life so far in terms of like trying to communicate to, our audience here in Phoenix? What are some ways in terms to approach this particular person in a way in terms of teaching or preaching?
Well, and it's things we've mentioned so far. I mean, it seems to me there's obviously a strong theme of deliverance, of how do we help and deliver those who are oppressed. There's a theme of courage and boldness. There's a theme of sacrifice. That's probably one of the strongest ones. The willingness to put your life and your comforts and other things at risk for the sake of others. Like we just mentioned here, sort of God's care, particularly for the poor and the oppressed. For the vulnerable, I think that's a really. I mean, there's a bunch you can draw from. I think you can go a lot of different directions. There's a sort of a temptation. There's a way you could sort of focus on just one of them, right, and say a lot in a particular sermon on this, or you can be like, yeah, her life just encompasses a lot of different things. We should touch all of them. I mean, I think I don't know what really sticks out to you for her life, but those are some of the ones that I probably another one, maybe just divine guidance, responding to God's sort of call. Upon you, which can look in a lot of different ways, but I think that's an interesting sort of thread to pull in terms of her just aware, however you take sort of the visions and dreams, et cetera. It is clear that was a motivating factor, and it did lead her to do much good.
Yeah,
I think there's something I didn't think about often, that the Underground Railroad. I know.
We might have to chop you up in that.
We might have to. The Underground Railroad wasn't. It's the R's and the W's.
Yeah.
I deserve it. Judge me fairly. The railroad. Oh God.
Oh my God.
Lord help me.
Help him, Lord.
I know. You think about Harriet Tubman and you think, oh, she led the Underground Railroad. But there were a number of people involved in it.
Yeah.
And even looking at that.
Tons, probably.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Sure.
So there
and
were
white people too.
There were guides, there were station masters, there's stockholders. Like, it wasn't free. And so sometimes we look at the work that needs to be done and we just think, it's all sacrifice. It's like, yes, but there were people who funded the Underground Railroad.
Yeah.
Like, that's an important thing to think about. There were people who ran stations. And so if you think an actual train, there were houses. And so the Quakers were highly involved, and that by conviction, to at least shout out and say, like, though, and this needs to be said too, in large part, white people owned black people as property. Yeah. That's a huge problem. There are many pastors and prized pastors who owned slaves while going to church Sunday morning and then delivering messages of freedom and grace and deliverance to their people while owning property that were humans and not counting them as full people. That was happening.
That's crazy.
But there was a set of white people called Quakers who didn't do that. Yeah. Right. And they were they were very, very involved in setting up this institution to dismantle that. So the institution of abolition was structural ways of saying, hey, this is a corrupt structure. Let's recreate a righteous structure that could help people actually get free. And they ran stations, they funded it. And Harriet Tubman came into that and then became one of the leading conductors, who were the guides who would actually take people out, guide them to these houses. Frederick Douglass was one of the station masters. So people would hide at his house before they would cross the border, into Canada. But the fact that you come into a network that's saying, like, hey, we together need to dismantle this problem.
So good.
And it was sophisticated. And so sometimes we look at these problems and just go, we just need to go do some stuff. We just need to go do some things, but we don't think through the actual points of structure that need to be built in order to dismantle something brick by brick. And I think that piece of it,
the strategy behind
the strategy, the organization, like the thought that went into how do we get as many people as possible free? Yeah. And not being there, you don't know the way in which Harriet Tubman comes into this organization, learns and then goes, I want to be one of the ones to go back. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then in that, there's this conviction, there's this fire that goes, oh, I got to go back. But she goes back, not sort of like recklessly.
Yeah.
She goes back going, oh, I have a network behind me.
Yeah,
I can go back because I know exactly where I can take y'all to keep you safe and not just go back and then try to run y'all out. It's, hey, I'm going to go back and get you, but there's specific places I can take you where you can hide. And then when you go do that, then go here. And hey, if you need food, there are people who are going to give you that. Like knowing that there's that entire structure, like a cloud of witnesses that are like, hey, we want as many people as possible to get free. That piece of it is the part that I go,
yeah, it was a lot of strategy to it. I mean, she had, disguises. She used spirituals, songs to help guide people for where to go. And yeah, I think I mentioned this earlier. So there's people that she helped directly, 70 people, but then there's hundreds more. She helped by saying, here's the structure, here's the system that you can sort of follow. Go here, go there. There'll be a house there. You
see what I'm saying? Like, and sometimes, things happen today and you go like, man, have we thought through as like strategically for righteous purposes? It's not just about strategy, but there's a piece of it that says, hey, what do we really want? Let's think through those pieces while people are still doing the work, right? You don't want to slow it down, but people thought through that and said, hey, here's how we can make this happen while this corrupt structure still exists. This is what we can do to do our part.
Yeah. And not getting into, the weeds of why many people don't get involved today. But I think one thing to mention, I mean, that conviction obviously was there, and they tied that to the gospel. They tied that to they believed that this was God's will for them. And I think in today's time, we just have a hard time connecting those two. That when we see injustices in our society, like, we struggle with that. Like, is this right to do? Is this, they go back and forth. And so I think, having that conviction above what you see in society, getting involved, like that's important. Have that conviction of God and act and do something and get him, anyway. But
some people would say that Harriet Tubman was, and I'd love to hear y'all thoughts on this, that she was disobedient. She was
disobedient to what?
She was disobedient because she was, going against what the laws had actually said for her to do.
Yeah, man, out that man. Who said that?
In all seriousness, there's a
group of people that would believe that.
People would say that she was in sin for doing these rescue missions, doing this whole underground railroad, that stuff, like that actually was something that should have not been done because it went against,
common law.
And so I don't know, what is your thoughts about civil disobedience?
I'm raising my hand on that one. Do those same people say that it was sin for these laws to exist? Do they say that it was sin to even legislate these laws? Do they say that it was sin to even own? Do they say that it was sin? I'm looking for the consistency. So let's just, if you're going to say that, if you're going to say, oh, Harriet Tubman was in sin because there was an established law that's over the land and she wasn't obeying the governing authority. All right, let's talk about
Romans 13.
Sure. But at the moment that these people decided to legislate something that was corrosively like problematic from the jump, are you the same person who would say, hey, the establishment of that law was corrupt to its core, was sinful to its core, was against the holiness of God, was defying the very foundation of what we understand to be the image of God? I'm just wondering,
then
would these same people say that the legislators and the perpetrators and the purveyors and every person who profited from the institution of the slave trade, were they in sin? If they would get on the mic and say that, I don't know when they would get to the point of even calling Harriet Tubman sinful.
See, but if you bring that into question, then we would have to question the midwives who take it to scripture, the midwives who disobeyed Pharaoh.
Oh, yeah,
right. I mean, there's so many different things, accounts in the Bible where they were going against things in the law of the land. So I don't think
they would say God is in sin then.
Exactly.
Because if Harriet Tubman is in sin, that would mean that Moses, getting to the point that he even becomes who he is, and then for God to directly choose him, and not only that, to be his friend. So talk to me about that. Person who says, Harriet Tubman wasn't sin. So I'm like, oh, okay, so then God is a sinner. Help me understand. I'm just trying to figure out like the consistency of the argument. I'm just like, where does it have real legs? Or to just say something that's like, I'll stop.
I got nothing to add. I just can't take stuff like that seriously. I mean, that's intellectual dishonesty. It's,
laziness.
I can't add to what James said. I mean, when you're talking about a system built on stealing people from another land, selling them illegally, right? Separating families, a system that was, and one of the big things that we don't talk enough about is how much sexual exploitation was part of slavery. Like most people were sexually abused in terrible ways. A system like that.
There's a more heinous word to use for that. We just don't want to use it because
exactly. And were violated in horrible ways. Where men were used as breeders, right? Like if you look
literally,
at the different sort of when they were selling enslaved people, and you look at the ways in which they described them, they had different terms for the men, like most described them as studs, right? Able to produce a lot. Differences for like childbearing women versus non-childbearing women, what they could do, et cetera. I mean, when you look at a system that's built like that, there's a government that sustains that and supports that is no government. It's not a government according to Romans 13, right? So if we're going to use the Bible, Romans 13 talks about the government being used as a sort of as sort of a punisher of those who do evil and do sin. It's not doing that role in that case. So in many ways, I think Harriet Tubman is being more faithful to Romans 13 because the government wasn't sort of following through on that.
That's good. So well, listen, man, all y'all people out there that be saying Harriet Tubman is in sin, all these other people that are in sin for doing righteous things from a civil disobedience level, whatever the case is, apparently y'all should stop saying that. Y'all should actually stop saying that because we see that is intellectual dishonest, as what Pastor V was saying, but also from a historical, biblical, theological perspective, it doesn't have legs, like you're saying. It has zero legs, and it almost is a deflector in some ways for something else that those people are trying to kind of prop up. But I did want to bring it up because there is a rhetoric out there, and so
that's just wild.
I wanted y'all to kind of debunk that whole ideology.
You was trying to set us on fire. I was like, excuse me?
Crash out time.
I was like, what?
That's funny.
What would be key lessons when you think about Harriet Tubman's life that you'd pull out and say like, yo, you should do this. Like approach life this way based on what you know from Harriet Tubman. Because there's a lot happening today.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say some of the things that immediately come to mind, just sort of a basic trust in God and seeking of the Lord. I think just you have a real sense in which, but I think I'd want people today to really be asking, Lord, help me to see what's happening and press upon my heart what I should say, what I should do. Another thing is just a willingness to sacrifice. And so, and I think we're not being called to do things like Harriet Tubman is, but like I think we all have comforts, relationships, status, et cetera, that like sometimes we hold on to in ways that we shouldn't because we don't want to say, well, what you said there is bad, is wrong, or what's going on right now is wrong, and we're afraid of the sort of the impact it might have on us. I think Harriet Tubman is an example of that. It's even if we might be at loss because we say something or speak up against things that are clearly wrong and sinful, we should still do it, and it doesn't matter. That's the thing. I mean, I think that the willingness of God's people, particularly responding to God's call in their lives to speak up and act in the face of great sin and injustice, God does use. He does use to great effect.
One thing I was going to say, well, two things real quick. One, I think one lesson is just to stand on business. You know what I'm saying? Like
10 toes down.
You got to stand firm, and that's the saying in our culture is, to stand on business, keep it 100. with your values, your principles, your convictions that you have. Like, yo, just speak up, be authentic, be real, and do good in the world. And so that's one thing I would just say. One lesson I would say from Harriet Tubman is to stand on business. The second thing too is just the importance of, and we talked about this years and years ago, of the importance of the Negro spirituals. And when we think about songs like, Wade in the Water and these different Negro spirituals, Harriet Tubman being integral in all of that with his Underground Railroad and how these spirituals and songs actually help and guided the people to also become free. I can't detach those spirituals from her life and others' lives regarding this whole situation of deliverance and whatnot. So those would be just two quick things that I would say.
One of the things that I would draw from, which both of you guys have said over and over again, is that sacrifice. I think the other thing that I would kind of encourage or draw out from her is just her tetheredness to her faith and why she did the things that she did, and the ways that she sacrificed and the ways that she put her life on the line. Like, that was deeply rooted in her conviction in God and the way that people should be treated.
That's good.
And the way that people should. And so if we see that today, that should be an encouragement to us when we see the way that people are being treated, and if it's against God's plan and God's will, as far as we see in Scripture, then those are the things that we should advocate for. And for her to be 12 and already starting, like, you're not too young to start advocating.
That's a good message.
She put her life on the line, literally. I mean, I don't know how big that iron was, but still, for her to see something that was unjust and for her to literally run towards it. And so, there's so much. And to the end of her life, like, it started at a young age, but then it went all the way until to the end of her life. Like you said, she was in the Civil War, but then even after that, she saw the vulnerable population of the elderly. And so I think that's, it doesn't stop with one thing. It is an embodiment of Christ being used, or you being used by Christ in order to do the things that are tough, that are hard, that are sacrificial.
Yeah. I say two things. One, you don't have to lead from the front. And so often we'll feature a Harriet Tubman or whoever, or we'll talk about Paul. And oftentimes, we want to be that person. How can I be like Harriet Tubman? And yes, there are ways to do that. But then realize there are so many other parts of the story. And Harriet Tubman worked with a network of people.
Yeah.
And so that's the first thing. Is like, you can be involved without being the front man, right? And Harriet Tubman, by the time she started saving people, the network was already fully formed. Again, she rose because of the kind of person that she was to be the Moses of that network, right? She became that person, but that's who she is. You don't have to be Harriet Tubman to make a difference. So that'd be one. Two, it reminds me of, the idea of the church being a body. And when Paul says everybody doesn't need to be the eye or the hand or the foot, you don't need to be the visible person to make that thing happen. And so realize, and I say this often, most people, especially if you haven't played sports, don't know what an anterior cruciate ligament is. Most people don't know what that is. It's the ACL. More people probably know what that is. Most people don't know it's like this big. Right. And for most of your life, you're not concerned about it until it pops. Now you can't walk. Like, you can't do anything. Right. And sometimes the role that you play, even if it's largely invisible, is super significant. Right. So just realizing that you're a member of a body. And that's why I think, like, the church is super important. The idea of community isn't just the idea of, like, gathering, but the idea of, like, you are members one of another. Like, everything is connected. The entire body is connected. Something goes wrong in the body and the way it heals itself and comes together. to like cover that gap because of the nature of how it works. Yeah. That is the way God built a body. And I think it's important to realize that, you know, Harriet Tubman was one of the greatest frontmen we'd ever know.
Yeah.
And even she was still connected to a body, to a network, to others. And so realizing that even though you may not necessarily make the kind of impact that Harriet Tubman specifically did, it doesn't mean that there aren't other ways that you can still be connected in the way that she was. And again, when you think about the humility of that, you're coming into something that's already established and still saying, well, I just want to play my part. And then that's what became, you know, eventually the Moses of a network. She's not thinking, I'm going to go into the thing to be the Moses of the network. Right. That was a name given to her because of the work that she did. You know, so oftentimes come in.
She was chosen. She was called.
You see what I'm saying?
Way, yeah.
Come into a thing and then give what you have. Just to speak a little bit more on the network piece of it, there are just other skill sets involved in that. Harriet Tubman came with hers, but again, the strategic nature of that's somebody else's different kind of thinking. The stockholders, like the people who funded it, that's a different kind of life, and the fortunate circumstances that might have given you those resources. The station masters to know, like, you know, the idea of hospitality or opening your home or having the space, and they're just so, or the person who even helped to help create that plan, right? And that kind of thinking. There's just so many different ways in which God has given you creativity. He's given you experience. He's given you skill sets, all through the things that you're doing in life to try to dismantle something that is a problem in the world. Yeah. So when we think about that and the way Harriet Tubman led that, seeing the other parts that she was a part of, and that all that together created what we know as the Underground Railroad, which she led.
Amen. Good. This is good stuff, man. I'm excited as we continue to kind of think through Harriet Tubman and others. But we're going to land a plane today. Thank you all for listening in. As we always say, you know, like, share, comments, subscribe, all those
if we missed something,
things.
leave it in the comments. Like,
and
tell us something about Harriet Tubman.
Leave it in the comments, man. We definitely want to hear what you have to say, or what your thoughts, or what your research about our dear sister Harriet Tubman. This is the Preaching Collective. Grace and peace.